Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host. Look at that crowd. Got a lot of visitors
people
tonight.
out there.
Got a lot of people in here tonight. I'm your host, as always, ObjectivelyDan, and joining me this fine evening is Bianca.
Hello.
From the Atheist Community of Austin's own Sexuality.
And Talk Heathen.
And other various projects.
I've been everywhere at this point.
Yep. V has been around the place. In case you haven't seen her on some of our other productions here, she's on quite a bunch of shows here and also other stuff outside the ACA.
Yeah, things are happening.
Yeah, so tell us about those things a little bit.
Okay, well, I am in the process of trying to put together a podcast called Just Bright, and it'll be an early morning, relaxing atheist podcast, which is not something I've seen before.
Yeah, that's cool.
I would wake up in the morning and be like, I feel like listening to, the regular content that I consume, but you put on so many of these shows and all of a sudden it's like very intense very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, how did you get first involved with the atheist community?
Yeah. So I moved to Austin 6 months ago for the ACA. Because I had been watching the shows for years. They had been pretty instrumental in my own deconversion process and actually figuring out, I'm an atheist. That's a word that I can apply to myself now. And I had run into a bunch of you fine people at the American Atheist Convention in Cincinnati in 2018. Kind of scouting where I wanted to go next, and you guys made a good impression.
Yeah, I was at that one as well. I don't know if we talked back then, but since you've been coming around more, because I also kind of moved to Austin in part because of the Atheist Community of Austin. Even before I started Truth Wanted, I was doing call screens for AXP. I was living in Waco, and when I first started Truth Wanted, I was driving from Waco to here to do this, and now that I live here, it's awesome. And there's tons of other people that come here for the community also, which is just really, really cool.
It's actually a very common story to be like, I moved here for this group of people, which is fascinating and amazing.
And tons, people don't often realize, this is a community space where people come and visit and hang out.
Yes.
It's not just the shows that we do here. We do all kinds of local events and stuff, which if you're around Austin, if you ever plan on coming down, definitely come check it out. We have a lot of folks tonight that are coming in just to see this show for some reason. I don't know why. But I'm excited, and I love seeing all kinds of faces. I mean, we get people from all over the place.
All over. We've had people from England, Iceland, Canada a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Just all over. It's awesome.
It's really cool. And so, it's nice to see that the Atheist Community of Austin isn't just for Austin people. It is for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody that wants to come down. So it's really, really cool. So some of the other projects that you do right now, like Secular Sexuality, for those who aren't familiar with that, can you explain kind of what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So Secular Sexuality live airs on Thursday nights at 7. And we talk a lot about sex and purity culture and the social stigmas kind of attached to different sexual conversations from a non-judgmental and open-minded standpoint. My co-host on that show is a sex therapist, Christy Powell, and so we have a lot of very interesting conversations about things like cuckolding and masturbation and all of these things.
Woo!
Don't know if those words are things we can say on this show.
Absolutely. Anything goes here. I can't control the call, so I've given up on that a long time ago.
Oh, gosh, I will direct you to Secular Sexuality. Call that show if you want to talk about those juicy topics.
That's right. And so, why does the Atheist Community of Austin need a show like Secular Sexuality?
That's a really good question. It does kind of bridge some gaps that other shows don't really touch on that much. And I think we get a little bit of flack for that because there are a lot of people who are like, atheism is just about whether or not there's a God. It shouldn't touch on other topics. And strictly philosophically speaking, that's true. As a definition, that is what it means.
Yeah.
But we also practice secular humanism here. And secular humanism is a worldview that encompasses open-mindedness and concern for humanity, all humanity, not just certain groups of people.
Yeah.
So secular sexuality is kind of a way to push that message a little bit and be like, hey, we're here for you regardless of who you are, regardless of where you're coming from, especially if there is some kind of religious baggage attached to sex or romance that you're kind of struggling with.
Yeah, it's nobody ever criticizes churches for having weekend barbecues, even though barbecue barbecues have nothing to do with Christianity, right? It's like, it's still
Right.
part of the community, and it's still like, watching football with your friends, especially around here in Texas, like a lot of church groups, I grew up did that, and that's just a thing that you do in the community, and like sexual issues and stuff are something that come up with us a lot because a lot of us come from backgrounds where that was a big deal.
Exactly.
Mostly in the taboo sense, right? Because
Right.
like that wasn't a thing we could explore. And so like, especially if you're coming out of the closet with that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I'm just now figuring this out. I don't know how to navigate this. Where do I start?
Exactly.
That's where they go to secular sexuality, right?
Right, exactly. Religion touches a lot more than just the God question, ultimately. And secular sexuality is a way to bring that conversation into other areas.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, in case you're joining us for the first time, this is Truth Wanted. This is a live call-in show that happens 7 o'clock Central Time every single Friday. Yes, all the calls here are live. And if you're watching this live, then you can still call into the show. We got one more spot here open. We're getting a lot of calls already.
Yeah.
But if you call into the number at the corner of the screen there, if you're watching this live, you can see. And we'll see if V wants to join us. We'll probably pop into Discord for just a little bit. Just a hint of a bit tonight. If just for a bit. We've been doing that for the past couple weeks here, and it seems to be going pretty well. So if you're watching this live and you're coming to the tail end of the show, remember we hang out on Discord for a little bit. So check that out. We already got a lot of calls here, so I just want to
Just jump in?
Let's just jump to it. You ready?
I'm ready.
Cool.
Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. I want to go first to Ted here in Pennsylvania. Hey, Ted, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Dan. I am Dan. Ted, I'm doing just fine. Thanks for asking.
You remember me, don't you?
Well, Ted, you have to be a little. Well, can you give a little more context to who you are? Because I just now talked to you, and I talk to people every single week. So maybe if you.
Oh, yeah. I'm the guy that called in before about talking about what happens after we die.
Okay. Yeah, and that also is a question that we talk about a lot on this show too. So what more did you want to talk about on that?
Well, I have an objective truth that I want to talk about.
Okay.
And that is that only something happens. And this is true in regards to everything. Like, only something is that which happens, right?
Only something is that which happens. Maybe, but it almost sounds like a tautology to me. Like it's...
Yeah,
it's something that really
like
doesn't mean much if you break it down,
Right. And, well, I don't know about that, because if we apply this truth to what happens after I die, then that means that only something can be that which happens after we die.
Okay, so like the first bit I'm following philosophically, at least. I don't know if it's useful logically, or like practically, but so yeah, So you're basically saying that something can happen, nothing can't happen. If nothing
Correct.
happens, then it can't happen because there's nothing to happen.
Well, if nothing happened, then that would make nothing something.
Right, exactly. Which I philosophically think is a valid point. I don't think, I'm curious about where you're going with that, though.
Well, I am not, let me say what I am not saying. I am not saying that implies that the person that died continues.
Okay. So what
But I am saying that, but after that person ceases to exist, that following that person's extinguishment from the universe, that after that, only something can be that which happens. Only something happens.
I guess I'm having trouble figuring out what that ultimately means.
Well, there's a lot of atheists and other people that constantly assert that nothing happens after we die.
Well, I think when people say that, though, Ted, they're talking about, like, our consciousness, our existence. Like, of course, after I die, like, the matter of my body is still going to break down. Like, there's still going to be things happening around me. But, like, from my perspective, there might not be anything happening as far as we can tell, right? I mean, we don't really have any evidence for it either way.
Right, from your perspective, but consciousness will continue via whatever is born after you have ceased to exist.
Well, sure, there'll be other conscious beings around me that are still living their lives, yeah.
Yeah, so your ending will be followed by some other organism's beginning. and that will be what is happening at that point in time.
Yes.
I'm all I can think of right now is Mufasa's when we die, our bodies become the grass and the antelope eat the grass.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I'm curious where this is going in terms of an argument for or against consciousness continuing.
I don't know if this is supposed to be something super profound or not. It's certainly, I think.
Well, that's subjective, whether or not it's profound.
Well, I think it's a valid observation, but I just don't know. I just don't know what you're getting at.
Well, all right. So I have a Twitter account called Naturalism Philosophy, and for years now, I've searched for people on Twitter who say that after we die, there is a black void, and that's where we go. We go into this nothingness, black void. And they go as far as describing this black void as being silent and completely black and dark, and there's no one else there but you. And so I'm refuting that idea that for one reason or another, a lot of atheists, that's the takeaway that they get when they hear nothing happens after we die.
Okay.
All right.
Now I see what you're getting at.
They misconstrue it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, they misconstrue it.
Yes, I agree with you. I think, and it's not just atheists, I think pretty much everybody kind of misconstrues it when we're talking about, like, there's nothing that happens after we die. Like, of course things are happening, right? Like, but I think we're ultimately just talking about our conscious experiences and
right. It's really hard to imagine not existing.
Yeah.
And so the closest thing maybe we can come to is this metaphorical black void that is silent and you're all alone. But it's not a literal place.
It's definitely not a literal thing. Yeah. Like I've only known existence unless, the Buddhists and the Hindus are right and that I've lived some other life. If I have, I don't remember, so I've only known existence. So I don't know what it's like not to exist because to know that would require to exist and it kind of doesn't work, right?
Correct. Can I use a thought experiment to try to make this more visceral for you all?
Sure.
Okay. So, all right. Imagine that you are the only organism in the entire universe. Mm-hmm. You're the only one there is. There is only your experience. Those eyes are the only eyes being looked out of. Now imagine that you die and you cease to exist. Then, somehow, a new organism comes to exist. Now, it is the only organism there is. Its experience is the only experience there is. Those eyes are now the only eyes being looked out of. Does that make...
Yeah.
How does that do it for you?
Makes sense to me.
It does it for me, Ted.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in sexuality mode.
Yeah, no, I think it's...
What's that, V?
It's interesting. It's certainly a good perspective to have and to think about, like, our own mortality and think about what that means in terms of other people and stuff. And a few weeks ago I had a guest on, Dave Warnock. We talked a lot about what it means to die and what it means to, like, live our life now with the existence that we have and stuff. And I think it's good to contemplate on that a bit. So. Yeah, I'd say good for you, Ted. I'm glad you're able to find a metaphor that you can work with on this.
Yeah, ultimately, I can't be 100% certain of anything, but I can be certain that only something is that which happens. That's like an objective truth, and it's very fundamental. I know it almost sounds stupid to say out loud. It's like, yeah, only something can happen. If nothing were to happen, then that would make it something.
And hey, if that something gives you peace and helps you sleep at night and gives you,
Actually, no, it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay, well, never mind all that then. If it helps somebody, it helps you, right? Like, I don't know what to say about it except it's just a cold, hard fact.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Although you can get into hard solipsism with this and say, well, is this something happening in your head or not there?
We could be annoying about it, but I don't want to do
Well,
that.
even if that were the case, then that would still, even if that were the case, that would still result in there being something afterwards because it would either be the scenario that I said, or it would be, okay, so that the brain wakes up out of the simulation after it dies in
got a point.
Simulation.
It would be something there if it was a hard solipsism thing.
Okay, so Ted, this is your I think therefore I am.
That's right. You did it, Ted.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for calling in about this. This was a good way to a good brain teaser, I guess, to start with. Is a good way to put it. We do got some other calls here, full line that I want to get to, but thanks again for calling. I hope to hear from you again.
All right. Thank you for taking my call.
For sure.
Thanks, Ted.
There we go. Something happens.
Something happens.
The end. I don't know what else to say.
The end, question mark?
You know, like, usually this is the part where I like to break down the call and say, you know, thoughts about what we were talking about. But, like, I don't know if I have anything else to say on that.
I mean, philosophically, I think we agree.
Sure.
It was helpful when he actually described what he was refuting.
Yes. And that's good to know if in the context of what that's in response to. Because, like, we didn't necessarily disagree with anything he was saying there. So.
Right.
Context is key. That's a
key.
good lesson to learn from this. Let's go ahead and go to another caller here. I want to get to Michelle in California. Hey, Michelle, you are on the air with Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
It's cool that there's another show like this.
Yes.
I'm all about it. So
all right.
I'm glad I found you guys.
Yeah,
and
yes.
It's also cool that V is it V or Vi?
V, hello.
I watched your interview with Matt Dillahunty, and
yay!
It's actually great because your background is kind of right up along the lines of what I'm interested in talking about.
Okay.
So, sorry, I'm a little anxious. I'm like, this is a really cool platform, and I'm just glad that I have the opportunity to like call in and talk about stuff like this.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to call this show and watch it. It means the world to me that you're here with us. So yeah, please take your time.
Awesome. Well, so I wanted to call in today and talk about faith a little bit because I've been watching a couple of the shows for a while now. And one of the things that I think could maybe help when you're talking to theists, because I'm not a theist, I'm an atheist. And sometimes like Matt Dillahunty will get kind of hot and heavy about the use of the word faith. And to someone who comes from a faith background, it might come across as, you know, thou dost protest too much. As far as
Matt gets hot and heavy about a lot of things, but that's a side note.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's like a firebrand. I'm all about it. I love Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you're conversing with people that are talking about faith in that way, in that manner, as far as almost insinuating it more along lines of hope than faith, because I think those two are very close. But having faith means the condition that there's no evidence to back up the hope that you have for the way that you believe life should be or you want it to be.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
And that's something. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michelle. Finish your thought, and I'll respond.
Yeah. I just seeing as a dating person, it's kind of. I'm a little envious almost of systems like religion that set up, you know, rules and rules within relationships that kind of, and I guess I'm sort of thinking it out loud now. It's like, it's a set rules and you should be able to set your own rules in your relationships, especially your intimate relationships. But I was just kind of toying around with that idea as far as belonging and how that's kind of it's a basic human need to feel that you belong somewhere, that you belong with a group of people or with another individual on a platonic or romantic basis. Belonging is like a very, very core need that humans have, and employing faith in order to sort of justify actions, whether or not it's, you know, staying together through a rough patch in a marriage or a relationship, or, you know, just something like that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we definitely have some thoughts on this. I think the first thing I would say, and I want to hear V's thoughts as well, is just when we use the word faith, there's definitely certain contexts of which, we could talk about that word. I've talked to apologists who say that faith is the knowledge of God that we have.
Right.
And so people, and the way I grew up using the word faith, I would describe it as a trust. It was like, you don't know everything yet, but you're just going to trust that things are going to work out. That's what my faith in God was going to be. And I think, Michelle, that's kind of similar to the definition you're using as far as what trust should be in a relationship, in that you don't know all the details. Yeah, you don't know what, the end game is going to be, but you trust that things are going to work out. And I don't think that we would disagree that trust is implicit in there. But when we use words like faith in a religious context, that can be a bit different from using it in a relationship context.
Right. I think the issue is that when you have faith in something that you've never experienced or seen yourself, and nobody else can demonstrate it, then that's when it becomes tenuous. If you saw maybe your parents or your friends or somebody have an amazing relationship, you know that thing exists. You can point to something and say, I know this exists. I'm going to have faith in that context that I will reach that too at some point. So that's a real thing in the real world, and we can hope and trust that will be something we can bring to fruition.
Yes.
It's a very different thing to then apply that same viewpoint to something that nobody has seen, nobody has proven.
Right. I have faith that relationships can work out because we've seen relationships work out with people.
Exactly.
I don't have faith that somebody rose from the dead 2,000 years ago because I've never seen somebody rise from the dead. You see what I mean? Like, it is a bit, it's different in the kind of context there. So
yeah.
I don't, obviously trust is needed in any kind of relationship there, right? So go for it. And if faith is the word you want to use for that, go ahead. Just understand that I certainly don't use the word for that just because of conversations like this where it just gets confusing for people.
Well, also I think that faith implies there's no better reason to trust it. So if you are in a relationship with someone who has never told you the truth and is always lying, it would be probably more appropriate to say you have faith that they will stop lying to you at some point, even though you've never seen that happen. It's different than trust, which is something that you can build on as your experience allows. Yeah.
Good points.
Well, and I guess the frame of mind that I'm coming from is because my parents' own marriage was dissolved when I was very young, so I never really had a working example to draw from. My grandparents were pretty stable, but my own parents' marriage kind of, I guess you could say, blew up my faith in the fact that relationships can happen like that. I'm not quite sure I believe it. And especially with, divorce rates being what they are, most people don't enter into marriages thinking that they're going to end. But the reality is that most of them, or, a great number of them do.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So when I'm talking about employing faith, I'm thinking more along long-term goals. I have faith, and also because I do want to have children. I want to have a family of my own, and I don't want to rely on the old. Obviously I was raised somewhat religiously, but that's definitely not the way I want to build my own relationship.
Yes.
But I don't have a lot of trust in a lot of other relationships. It just seems kind of hopeless. One, I know it's probably just fatigue now because, with all the dating apps and stuff like that, you can literally meet anyone.
Oh, I've been there.
And it's almost like a paradox of choice almost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I have, I feel like it could work with this person, but who's to say that this is the best thing? Should I, keep looking, or should I try and square with these flaws? Everybody's flawed, but are my flaws going to work with this person better than they would with this person?
Right.
Or and just kind of trying to take all that in stride and not apply the idea of 50 years from now, I want to have faith that I'm still with this person, or I want to trust that I'm still with this person.
Well, I think a key difference and something we've been kind of harping on is as opposed to a religious faith. In a relationship faith, and we'll use that word, there are still signs you can look out for. There are still signs to know whether or not a relationship is working, what kind of direction the relationship is going. Whether or not your relationship is going to work out 6 years from now is not arbitrary. It is based on interactions that you have with people, red flags that people can point out, or even your own self-growth and change over time can be affected. So, yeah, there's definitely tangible signs you can point to. Sometimes they're not always clear, right? And that's why humans are really messy at their relationships, but there's still stuff you can look to, even if it is all in retrospect, or even if it is coming from a third party and not necessarily your own.
Right. Yeah. It's more in your capacity to control than, say, your relationship with a non-existent deity.
Yeah.
Because there is another person there to kind of work with. So it's a similar word, but I don't think it's necessarily a similar situation as much. Also, I just want to kind of throw out there that, I think the concept of religious dating, religious culture, gives us the idea of the one and like soulmates and the one person who you're supposed to be with. But I kind of left that by the wayside a little bit and was like, you know what? Whoever I'm with it's going to be a unique relationship, and it might be amazing and it might not be so amazing, but there's not someone else who is meant for you waiting for you.
Yeah, I've even been against this idea almost of that necessarily that you have one person that you're with your entire life. I don't think that works out that way for everybody.
And I'm right there with you. Like, I'm not even set on marriage. It's like I live in California. We're very open over here.
Sure.
But it's more of like a personal thing of where I am focusing a lot on like, who do I want to have kids with? And like, this is regardless of whether or not our relationship works out, we're going to have a joint interest in the life of the person that we create. And it's such a heavy thing. I'm like, do I even want to dive into that? I mean, I'm at a point where I'm like, I feel like I should, or I shouldn't say that. I don't feel like I should.
Yeah.
If anything, I almost feel like I shouldn't. I was listening to you guys talk about the anti-natalism the other day, and that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Michelle, I'm 23. The thought of having kids scares the hell out of me right now. Anyway, regardless of whether I was an anti-natalist or not. But part of the reason why I am an anti-natalist is, well, at least it's a good term for me now, is just because. I mean, that's a whole other question of ethics and bringing people into the world. But if having kids with somebody is your goal, and you want to find somebody that's compatible enough for that, then I think you can do it. Like I feel like this is turning to an encouragement session now. Like go ahead, live your best life.
Michelle, you should totally call into secular sexuality. I not to plug it,
I was just
but
I haven't heard about that one yet, but I'm definitely interested in learning more about that. I'm actually starting a master's program for LPCC in counseling psychology next year.
Awesome.
So I'm like super interested. I'm a sex positive, all that kind of stuff. I think I'm still, when you're raised, we weren't raised super religiously, but we were sort of lukewarm.
Sure.
I guess.
Yeah, that shit hangs on though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but the culture and like, even stuff like princess movies and all that stuff. It's like, I want someone who's, going to treat me like a princess, but also like the strong, independent woman that I am.
Right. I say call in. That this sounds like something we could talk about for ages.
Yes.
So
yeah, absolutely. When is that show?
Secular Sexuality airs on Thursdays at 7. So one day before this.
All right, definitely noted, and I will subscribe and all that stuff too.
Awesome.
There we go.
I look forward to talking to you more.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, thanks for calling in. If you want to talk to me about this more, I have an email address. It's truth@atheist-community.org. You should definitely message me there. And also call into V's show as well, because this sounds like we keep talking about this. But we do have a full line. I do want to get to some other people. But again, thanks for calling in, and thanks for being so open about your struggles right now. And I'm so glad that you got to have this conversation with us. So.
Awesome. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
For sure.
Have a great night. Did you? Was that a plant, V? Did you make that call? So
I mean, I
show?
could not have planned that better.
Okay.
Like that's too coincidental to be planned.
But even it's funny because even though she said she's from California and she's much more open and sex positive, like just living in the United States and having, it's still the touches of kind of a religious sex culture is still there a little bit. Like even just the goal of having kids.
Yeah.
I can't tell someone's heart. I don't know where that comes from, but I know that is something that is religiously inspired very much for some people who feel like that they personally feel like they can't accomplish what they want in life if they don't have a family of their own.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And for some people, that's absolutely valid. And for others, if that's not you, that's also totally valid.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not me.
I just wish people explored that more because I feel like I've met people in my life where they seriously they regret having kids.
Oh,
which is like a really
and you can't
sad...
talk about that to anyone because then you sound like a terrible person.
Right.
But it's a thing.
Yeah. And, obviously they love their kids and they want what's best for them, but they do wish that they had planned their life out a bit differently. And
so good on Michelle for thinking about this so much and actually putting that thought in because I feel like a lot of people just assume it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
And then whoops,
yeah. It's, and then they figure out it's not for them. And,
we should have you on Secular Sexuality.
Hey, I'm down. Thursday night, I could probably make it. Well, let me know when we can do that. Let's go ahead and go to our next caller, though.
Sounds good.
I want to go to Tom here, calling in from the UK. What is up, Tom?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Going all right. It must be pretty late where you're at right now, huh?
Yeah, it's a bit, yeah. So are you both ex-religious?
Yes.
So how did you deal with the fear of hell, basically? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Great question.
That is a good question.
V, you want to start with this one?
Well, I think I have a different experience than a lot of people that I've talked to because for a lot of theists or ex-theists, regardless of where they are now, the fear of hell is the thing that hangs on. So they don't believe anymore, but they will still wake up with nightmares. They will still have these moments of fearing that. For me, I kind of deconstructed everything and left hell far behind before I even started thinking about whether or not God existed. So for me, hell was no longer a concept, even as I was a Christian, because of just certain theologies that I ascribed to at the time to kind of make sense of where my moral compass was. For me, the fear of hell went away far before I even became an atheist, which I am realizing is a kind of a blessing.
Sure.
If I can use that word.
Yeah, say whatever you want. But yeah, so I mean, my experience was a bit different. So there's a video out there of me, if you've seen it, from Anthony Magnabosco's channel, where I do a follow-up with him talking about me as an atheist now. And that was the very first time I ever really talked to anybody about it, let alone just publicly out there on the internet.
Wow, so first time you talked, you were just like,
pretty
Anthony
much. I was like,
what?
I'll just get it out there. And the week that I did that video, I had this reoccurring nightmare of the world was ending, and like a bomb was going to go off or, something. And I could make the choice whether to listen to God so I could go to heaven or not to go to hell. And this happened several times the week of that because I was so anxious about telling people this was my thing now. And eventually that went away. And I've tried to think about, how did that go away? Like, why am I feeling better about that? And part of this is because, I'm once surrounded by other people. I've talked to a lot of other people about this stuff. And talking about your anxieties can be helpful, especially if other people who've shared the same anxieties.
Exactly.
Coming down to the Atheist Community of Austin, where I've had in-person conversations and having other people's experiences has been amazing because I couldn't talk about this with friends and family at home.
Oh, no. This is taboo.
Yeah. And so community is one way of which you can kind of ease that way out of it. Now, again, V was talking about, there's people who still have nightmares about this stuff years later, and that's just a fear that people have. And I realized that, fear was also the thing that was keeping me believing.
Yes.
You know? And I had to let that go. I had to decide, am I going to go the way I am because I'm afraid or because I want to be honest with myself?
Yeah.
And I chose to be honest with myself. And that took time, but I'm here now, and I don't have any nightmares like that. And I have people coming to me asking, well, what do you do about this kind of stuff? It's like, well, yeah, you just find your own path with it, I guess.
Yeah, you gotta face this head on. Mm-hmm. And then also the thing, if you're kind of struggling with it a little bit, for anybody out there watching, the thing that really impacted me just on a logical level is, well, are you afraid of the hells or the tortures or the afterlives of other religions?
Yeah.
No, like I've never given a second thought to any of those. Why is that? It's because I wasn't raised in that culture.
Right.
It's because that wasn't the narrative that was given to me.
Yes.
And there are millions and billions of people out there who aren't afraid of hell because hell isn't in their culture.
Yep.
So the fact that you might be afraid of something doesn't say anything about how true that thing is.
Absolutely. There's a lot of Muslims out there. There's a lot of Hindus out there. They're not afraid of going to hell. It was never brought up to them. That wasn't a thing. Like, that wasn't an option. And so because it's an option for us as we've grown up in this culture,
right.
then we become more afraid of it. But when you realize how much of a cultural fear that is, I think it's easier to kind of let that go.
You're not afraid of the villains in the books you don't read.
Yes. Ah, I love that. I've never heard that before. Did you come up with that?
Just now.
Oh, that's
top of my head.
Brilliant. I love it. Does that answer your question, Tom? Oh.
Tom dropped.
Tom just dropped.
It's too late.
Oh, my goodness. Well, hopefully he was listening. And, we gave our answers to it. So unless he had more to say, I think that about sums that one up, huh?
I think so.
Yeah, gosh, the fear thing just really bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish, if people come to their beliefs and their conclusions based on their own logic and their own reasoning, that's fine. I hate that people come to it because of fear. And I see it way too often.
Oh, it's the best tactic to get people on your side across the board. Religion, politics, social issues. You inspire fear in somebody, and it makes them fall in line. Mm-hmm. So the bravest thing you can do is to question that fear.
I agree with that. Let's go to Dennis here in Indiana. Dennis, you are on the air here with Truth Wanted. What is up?
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. I got a couple pet peeves.
Let's hear your pet peeves.
Yeah. Well, the first one is about gravity. You know how Christians and theists are always bringing up how evolution's a piece of shit and all that, but they believe in the theory of gravity. They like to call it just a theory. Well, the situation is we have all kinds of evidence about evolution, DNA, fossils, the environment. We know how it works intimately. We have no idea how gravity works. We know the effects.
I don't know, Dennis. I think we have some idea. I think, like, if I know I'm gonna, if I drop this phone, I think I have an idea that it is gonna fall.
That's
right?
the effects of gravity. That's the effects of gravity.
Well, that's
not understanding how it works.
But that's okay. Isn't that a part of gravity, though? If I understand the effects of something, Dennis, do I at least have an idea of something?
Yeah, you have an idea, but
okay. But you said nobody has any idea about gravity.
Know about the quantum level. We don't know about galaxies, how the stars should be flying apart.
And
so we invented dark matter.
Totally.
We have no clue.
Totally, Dennis. And I totally agree with you there. There's so much we can know exactly how gravity works. But you made the claim that we have no idea about it, and I'm saying, well, we can at least point to something. That's all I wanted to make there, right?
No, we have no idea how it works. We have an idea about gravity.
Yeah. Okay. You can't say that we have no idea how it works, and then you say we have an idea about gravity. To me, that's.
I think we're dinkering over
maybe
semantics here.
Maybe so.
Yeah, I would say it's like if you went back before Darwin, and you made a statement. Okay, if you took gravity back to that point, and we knew no more about evolution we do now, that's where we're at with gravity. At that point, Darwin noticed the species and how they were changing and stuff, so he made up his theory. Well, we're not that aware with gravity. All we do is measure the effects of gravity. We know the formulas with Newton. We can measure the stars and the orbits. Now, they say, this is what I've never understood about it, that everything in the universe is connected together gravitationally, and I can't understand how it can happen at the speed of light. Mm-hmm. I don't buy that. I think there's some way there's infinite velocity particles, or another universe that connects all this stuff. Okay, that's all I had to say about that.
Sure.
Pretty much.
Okay.
But the other thing is Lawrence Krauss. I'm pissed off at him because he said it was nothing. I say the universe came from everything.
Well,
everything that
Dennis,
was.
hold on. We gotta provide some context for what you're saying here. So are you referring to Lawrence Krauss's book, A Universe from Nothing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And in
and
the
he
book,
said,
go ahead.
He basically said everything came from nothing, and the religious people have been picking about that for years. And we've had to defend it, and it didn't come from nothing. It came from everything. If he'd have just said it came from everything, we wouldn't be having this mess.
Yeah. I agree with you. The wording of that book, and I've read that book myself. It's an incredibly fascinating book. I do recommend you read it if you haven't already. But, you can definitely get into arguments about the semantics of the words. And, he has an argument in the book of why he's choosing to use the word nothing. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of on it. I don't know if you've read it, V, but it's just I think it causes more confusion for people. It's the same reason what we were talking about earlier about using the word faith. It's that's a word that has context for people and has cultural definitions and cultural understandings that just don't translate well over a mass audience where people can pick fights about what we're meaning when we're saying that, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And honestly, though, if he had said it came from everything, then we would be arguing that everything is God.
That's true. Yep.
So regardless of the word used, theists are going to pick it up and try and use it themselves.
Yes, that is true as well.
Yeah, but see, they use the argument something can't come from nothing. That's the argument they always use.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms as well, because if we were talking about something coming from nothing, then it doesn't necessarily apply that nothing is something, yada, yada, yada.
Right, exactly.
It's a whole
thing. Back to caller number one.
Going back to caller number one, it's something we've talked about on the show before. It doesn't really pan out. And even if it did make some sort of logical sense, it's still pretty weak on its face. Yeah.
Anybody who has any understanding of how we assume things actually went down and the understanding of what the singularity is and what nothing, quote unquote, is, that argument falls on its face. So really all you have to do is a little bit of basic research to refute that one.
Yes. And also, because we had this conversation last week about this, if, we're talking about the observations of modern peoples and modern scientific instruments, not the observations of people thousands of years ago who were writing texts. They had no idea about the stuff that we know now about the universe. And I don't think if you try to put those two things together, it doesn't really work. So, Dennis, thanks for bringing this up. Thanks for sharing your pet peeves with us. I hope you have a restful night, so you're not as peeved.
Well, I've got a cold, and I hadn't had one for 2 or 3 years, so I did okay to it. So I'm glad of that. I didn't cough or anything. So appreciate you guys, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I won't give you my prayers, but I'll spare you some thoughts. How about that? All right, Dennis, take care. So he is making the point about, there's stuff that we don't know about gravity, but you gotta be careful if you're saying, I have no idea. We have no idea about it.
Right.
Because V, I don't know you at the quantum level, but I still have an idea of you, right? I don't have to know the inner machinations of every single part inside of you to know.
I don't know me at the quantum level.
Exactly, right? So maybe we really don't know anything if we don't know it at the quantum level.
I mean, hard solipsism again.
It always, this is the trap. This is the trap of running a show called Truth Wanted, because then people get you on. It always boils down to, what do you mean by truth, Dan? And also, with hard solipsism, you can't really prove anything. These are the running themes of the show. And I should have known this when I, picked a name like that.
But it's so catchy.
Yeah. And calling myself Objectively Dan, I mean, I was asking for
yeah, you are
fights on that one.
You deserve it a little bit.
You're probably right. I want to go to Derek now in Alabama. Hey, Derek, how's it going?
It's going great. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. I hope
ID as well.
Yeah,
Hello.
Great. So hope as good as you can in Alabama, I hope.
Well, I just made it here less than an hour to go to spend time with my kids, so
great.
Try to leave as soon as I can.
Wonderful. Well, how can we help you here tonight?
So just a slight bit of background. Won't try to bore you or go on too much, but I am actually a graduate student currently. I know, I want to say it was Michelle earlier was talking about wanting to start grad school next year to be a clinical therapist, and that's what I'm going to school for.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
But how it ties into this is part of my, I do a graduate assistantship in which I get to teach an entry-level psychology class. And thankfully, it's not a general psychology. It's called Psychology of Modern Culture, and I get a lot of free reign to pick whatever I want to talk about, as long as I can relate it back to psychology.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's been really fun. The last day of class this semester, I'm going to talk about conspiracy theories, and I love watching your show, so I'm drawing a lot from that.
Great. Fantastic. Let me know if you use any clips.
I was about to say I may use some clips during the show.
Woo!
But
free advertising. All right, thank you.
Exactly. But I wanted to propose something to my class, and before I did it, I wanted to run it by both of you and kind of get your thoughts on it. And that is that I kind of consider creationism that it could fall into the realm of a conspiracy theory, in the thought that if it is true, there's a huge conspiracy to cover it up with evolution. Or vice versa, that evolution is the conspiracy theory. I don't know which one would be the actual conspiracy theory, if that makes sense.
Okay. So first off, I want to say the fact I'm so glad you considered my expertise enough to be useful for a graduate level class, or well, I guess it's an intro class. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's undergrad.
I'm fine with that. That's pretty cool. Here's what I'll say about that. So I think that could go one of two ways, because there are definitely young Earth creationists that you talk to who will straight up say, yes, scientists and other people are lying to you, and because they don't want you to know the truth about God. And there's another kind of narrative that goes on that says, well, they're just ignorant to these ideas. You know, they're kind of got these faulty reasoning, and that's why they're coming to these conclusions. But if they look at things under a biblical lens, or some will even go far as to say the science is off, and if you look at the true science,
true science,
then you would come to the same conclusions I would, right? So I think there definitely is a stream of conspiracy in there, and I think you would have to believe on some level, if you are really hardcore enough of young Earth creationists, that there are people who lie about this stuff. Because, I mean, as you well know, and as we well know, the facts about evolution, the facts about the history of the planet and the universe are so well established in the scientific community, it would be absolutely mind-blowingly crazy to think that there are people who have, fabricated stuff at this point. There may be a study here and there that may not be true, but the background evidence is enough to where any reasonable person would come to the conclusions that we would. At least that's how we would feel about it, probably, right?
Yeah, we would hope so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I would want to sit in on that class for sure and just watch the reactions of people. I think what you were saying of just differentiating between the people who believe it because they just haven't thought about it very much, and that's kind of what they were taught, and it doesn't really impact them other than that. And the people like Kent Hovind or all these people who are pushing a narrative that you're being lied to and the whole world is in on it. So it's a subsection of creationists for sure.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that falls under conspiracy theory realm.
And young Earth creationism is almost it's not uniquely an American phenomenon, but as far as countries in the West who are, currently teaching at a collegiate level on stuff, we're probably one of the only countries out there that have the as many colleges as we do that are still teaching young Earth creationism. I don't think you would find as many colleges teaching young Earth creationism in like France or the UK, for example, right?
Are there colleges teaching young Earth creationism?
Yes.
Is that creationism?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Well, Bible colleges.
Oh, well, private ones, yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I know, so like, I come from Waco, so like Baylor, the professors have had a stint about this, but officially they do have to teach, kind of old world models and stuff like that. But there's still education institutions that definitely will tell you that, like young Earth creationism is a thing. That is true, yes.
Or just like avoid the subject entirely.
Yes.
And be like, okay, science is now math.
Yeah.
Like all you do is now is math because we don't want to talk about anything that might get in the way of your worldview.
Right.
Yeah, I was quite surprised. This is my first semester teaching, and very early in the semester, like week 3 or so, just in talking about science, I mentioned the term evolution, and then got the whole evolution is just a theory from a couple of students, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like,
no.
is this real? Like, I've heard about this, and growing up in Alabama, I'd heard it in church there, but then I was like, this is 2019, and this is in college. Like, it just blew my mind that it's still a thing. And so that's kind of part of why I wanted to bring this up. And then reading the law in Ohio that was recently passed by the Ohio House, I was like, yeah, this would be perfect. And it's not a law where I teach, so.
There you go. Yeah, I went to a public college, and I had friends that, went to believed in young earth creationism, no sweat.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And it's certainly more common than what you might expect, I guess, as a college professor, too, but I don't know.
Isn't there I think one of the latest Pew studies said that only 40-something% of Americans accepts
young earth creationism?
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm not up to. I've definitely seen some Pew stuff on there before.
Yeah. I'm just going off of a Tim Minchin skit, so.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely not the majority anymore. I don't know if it ever was the majority, but it's still even if it was like 30% or 20%, that's a big chunk of the country.
Too many.
Yeah, I mean that's
those are big
millions
numbers.
and millions of people. So anyway, I hope that's some material you can use for your class there, or at least give you some insight on how you want to approach your project. Please, Derek, email me about how this goes if you end up using clips from me or what. I want to hear about this, and I wish you luck with what you're doing.
Yeah, I definitely will, and I appreciate you taking my call and letting me kind of run it by you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for fighting the good fight out there.
Yeah, we'll let you go, but take care, Derek. And I would love to. Using me for a college class? Come on, get out of here. That's just crazy. I wouldn't use me for a college class, but oh well, different people have different tastes, I guess. Great. Well, we got some other calls here on the line. I want to go to Nicholas here.
Nicholas.
In California. Hey, Nicholas, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi.
Hey.
Okay, so my thing sounds really funky.
All right. I'm used to the funky, Nicholas. This is a very funky show we got going on here.
This might be a bit much, but so I myself, there's a bit of a backstory for this. Is that all right if I explain it?
You wouldn't be the first.
It's not.
You won't be the last. So go ahead.
All right. So I myself am an atheist. I have been for basically my whole life. My dad is as well. We watch lots of the Atheist Community of Austin shows, like, all the time. And I don't believe in supernatural things or things without evidence, like things based on faith.
Good for you.
But yeah, so here's the backstory bit.
Okay.
When I was younger, losing my teeth and stuff around that age, 8 or 9 years old, after my family moved to a different town, every single time I lost a tooth, I would put it on my bedside table, and when I woke up, it would be perfectly split in half, completely perfectly, as if some kind of very accurate bone saw was used.
Oh, like a very vengeful tooth fairy.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And I've always asked my parents, have been like, hey, did you guys cut my teeth in half? And they've always been like, no. And even if we had, we couldn't do it that precisely or that quietly. And one night after I had lost one of my teeth, I woke up and there's this huge looming figure over my bed, which I know sounds like, I don't know, sleep deprivation, hallucination or something like that. But I was 8 or 9 years old, and so I was scared, and I flipped over. I couldn't see what happened. I, after 20 minutes, got up and checked to see if my tooth was still there, and there was only half of it, and they never got cut in half after that. ever since then, I've kind of just been like, I don't know. I've just been confused as to what to think, because I know that could be entirely a hallucination because I was tired and just woke up and 8 years old. But like, I don't know, just having also my teeth being cut in half and then stopped after that, it's a weird thing. And I also work and go to school in a town with like very, very many very religious and very conservative and homophobic people. And a ton of them, like, not a ton, but like when I tell people that story, they're like, oh, it was a demon. You've got to cleanse yourself and stuff like that. And
you're just like, nah, bro, it's a tooth fairy. Come on. This is already established.
I was going to say, have you called the Winchester brothers? Because it sounds like the intro of a Supernatural episode.
It kind of does. You're absolutely right.
It's like just the right level of creepy and ridiculous to be like, that's disturbing.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, so Nicholas,
I don't like believing things just based on sight, because like, human brains aren't reliable.
Yeah, especially 8-year-old brains, you know, and that's something I have some weird shit that happened in my childhood, and I just have to chalk it up to I was just probably a kid and like got it wrong. Like and I, you know, I can't go back in time, Nicholas, and see like what exactly happened there, what's going on, but like I just have to assume that the most logical explanation, at least for this, is maybe it's a combination of being a sleep deprivation and just being 8 years old. You know,
I see. That's absolutely what I think of, like seeing something. But like, also, there's still the fact that like all of those teeth were cut in half, and even if it wasn't like some terrifying tooth fairy monster or whatever, which it wasn't, but like.
Maybe your parents were just BSing you. I don't know. Like
right? Like a practical joke gone very wrong.
Yeah, like I will say that's a very specific thing, and like very specific for you to remember. Like, do you remember how many times, like, was this like 2 or 3 times, or was this like 5 or 6 times?
A total of like 5, I think.
Okay. Huh.
And like after that night, none of my teeth ever got cut in half again. My sister, She never lived with me, but one time when she spent the night, she lost one of her teeth, and that morning, that one was cut in half.
Holy shit.
And that was the only time it happened to her, but like, it's just a really weird thing, and I don't like not
knowing, right?
Like,
yeah, well, let's
so.
break this down. I think it's not a demon, and here's why I don't think that.
Not.
Yeah.
What kind of fucking demon just shows up and like doesn't even haunt you or shit? Just kind of just fucks with you and just like splits your tooth in half.
Right.
It seems like it could be a really shitty, incompetent demon, and maybe that's what it is. And then he just leaves you alone. Like there's no closure there.
Saw me. That's it.
Now maybe that's the real haunt.
Nothing else has happened since then.
Maybe he's the best demon because now you're thinking about it, and that's what really scares you, is because you don't know for sure. But I don't know. This is wild.
I mean, there are. I mean, I'm just throwing out possibilities here that are not tooth fairy. It could be that did you get these? Did your parents like take these teeth to a dentist and be like, "Are these my son's teeth?" Or
no, they never took them to the dentist. My mom I don't know. I've heard some people say this is like a really weird thing, but my mom always like kept all my teeth after I lost them in like her jewelry box. So my mom has all my like old halved teeth.
Interesting.
Well, okay. So you still have the teeth.
Yeah, if you still have them.
That's interesting, because now you can. Okay, so you can actually verify that they were split in half. You still got them today.
Yeah, you could take them to a dentist and like figure out what happened, because there are instances where teeth will split in half if you're grinding your teeth.
I've actually looked that up.
Yeah.
Like I didn't grind my teeth as a child because I thought it was gross. I didn't bite my nails either. I never got like hit in the face or anything. Like even when my brother and I would fight, like face was off limits to each other. And like I didn't eat hard candies because I hated them.
So Nicholas, what do your parents think?
What the fuck is this? Okay, well, my dad, who's been laughing in the other room while I'm on this call, and I assume is also watching the stream, he is convinced it was just like a hallucination or something, or maybe he was in my room because he's really tall, but not like as tall as what I may or may not have seen. And he thinks that just like, I don't know, Dad, what do you think?
Hello?
He says he's not sure. He just does not know.
So yeah, the seeing the person thing doesn't impress me as much because I once thought I saw Santa checking in on me when I was a little kid on Christmas night. That was probably just my dad. But like, you know, like the tooth thing, that's I like where V is going with this. It must be some sort of dental phenomenon.
Because if your sister also had it happen to her, it might be something genetic that maybe you had something wrong with some of your baby teeth.
I like blood.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'd have to research this one more.
Yeah.
You've put.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, when I started this show, I thought the real shit was going to be like the Bigfoots and like the aliens. Nah, it's the Tooth Fairy. That's what got me. And I can't solve this one. I don't know. We got to get to the mystery bus because Scooby and the gang's got to help me figure this one out. I don't know.
Yeah.
My God.
If you've got the time and would like to do some more recon, bring those things to a dentist and call back.
I gotta look this one up because you may have just bested me this one here, Nick. I don't know. This is outside of my. I need to call an expert.
Yeah, right. Who do we?
Mark, get a list of the local dentists. We're doing some interviews. We're gonna figure this one out for you, Nick. I don't know.
Spin-off series for patrons only.
Patron exclusive here. We delve into this one, I guess. I don't know. God, thank you for calling in with this.
Oh, I have. Is it okay if I mention one more thing that's kind of related to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We need some more details on this case here, Nicholas, if we're going to crack it. And I'm not talking about your teeth.
After part.
Okay.
That was a pun. Wow. So, as I mentioned earlier, the town I go to work and school in, because I'm in college right now. I call it the most southern town in Southern California. Not because of its latitude, but it's not a fantastic place for people. I've had many people, not many, but many of the people that I've told about this be like, oh, you were haunted by a demon, or a
shitty demon, but yes. Or the best demon.
Like that. Yeah.
Case is still out on that one, but go on.
I've legitimately had some people say to me oh, that's why you're gay, is because this demon came and cursed you.
What?
What is happening?
That's a hot take.
God, that is.
Whoa.
Wow.
One of my friends in my English class was like, yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, I have this paper.
Of course, your teeth cracked as a child. That's why you're attracted to men.
Wow.
What the heck?
It's a lot.
I think what it is it's a spooky thing that happened to you, and people think that being gay is a spooky phenomenon. I don't know, and maybe they tie the two together. Yeah, I don't know. That's just
that's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow. Also, I'm sorry. That sounds like it sucks. Yeah. But also, that's amazing, and thank you for sharing.
No problem.
I just can't.
You broke Dan.
I don't know what to do with this right now. This is amazing. Now, I wish somebody called in and said, hey, my teeth broke in as a child, and I think I'm gay because of it. And I would love to explore why someone would actually believe that. But, yeah, I think...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, Nick, we need to explore this again. I won't leave this behind. I know I tell people to call back with this stuff all the time, but I got to know, Nick. I'm going to look this up. This is going to bother me. I can't.
I've been wanting to call into secular sexuality and the atheist experience, but every time I either get too stressed for the atheist experience, or for secular sexuality, I usually have my statistics class when it's going, so I don't call in. But
well, we've got a new voicemail box that you can call in and leave a question whenever, and then we'll answer it on air. So.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Call in about teeth. Ooh.
We need to do that. So now you're stressing me. You passed that stress on to me, Nicholas. Yeah. I just want you to know because I'm
not sleeping tonight.
Now the demon is haunting me. So I'm going to call an exorcist after the show and get this one figured out, and my dentist, and see what we'll do. But
oh my God.
No, thank you so much for talking about this with us. And I know I absolutely did not help you at all with solving your mystery here. But I mean, I think
I didn't.
It's in seriousness though. It must be some sort of, I don't know, maybe cavities in your teeth. I don't know. There's got to be
I've never had cavities in my life.
Well, I got to see if this has happened to other people, right? And we can look at their experiences. Then there's got to be a root cause there.
Root cause.
I've done research and stuff, like trying to figure out, has anybody like had their teeth just like split perfectly in half after, like when they were a child and they fell out, and I haven't found anything about it. I've looked up why do teeth split, why do baby teeth split, all this different stuff, and I can't find anything.
Tell you what, Nick, let's make this a group thing. If you post on the Atheist Community of Austin Discord, post pictures of your teeth, and I'm sure there's some people on there right now that'll help us solve this mystery tonight. Because we need to make this happen. I need a full report on this Discord. We need to get this one going if we can get back to Nick. So anyway, thanks again for calling. We're gonna get to the other callers here, but have a great night.
Yeah.
And we'll catch up. We'll catch up. We'll figure this out.
Wow.
What am I doing? What's going on, V?
This is amazing.
I never thought I'd get calls about a demon tooth fairy.
It's kind of beautiful.
You never know what happens with this show. Honestly,
I'm starting to realize that this is awesome.
It's beyond my control. I'm just a guest here on this crazy train. I don't run the show.
gosh.
The calls run the show, man. That's wild. I want to look into that seriously and maybe talk about that more when I figure something out. But that's cool.
I'm like racking my brain for friends who also are dentists.
There's going to be some dentist that calls next week. It's going to be like, oh, yeah, this is easily explainable. But
oh, please, so we can all sleep.
Dentists who watch the show, please give me your advice. Because it's going to be, I don't know. Anyway, we do have some other calls here that we want to wrap up the night here with. I want to go next to Chris in Arizona. Hey, Chris, how's it going tonight?
It's going well. How are you guys doing?
Well, I was doing fine, and then this thing happened to me, but I don't have time to get into it now. Let's talk about you, Chris.
I heard.
Yeah.
I heard. So, I am recently broken free from indoctrination.
Congratulations.
Within the last, thank you, 30 years. I spent 30 years being indoctrinated from the age of 4 years old. I was raised by, and forgive me if I digress away from what the screen caller, just quick background, I guess, like the previous caller. I was raised being told that I had a high calling on my life. I was supposed to be a prophet.
Wow.
And my mother took me to several pastors and would have them pray over me and confirm this. And they would pray over me and get these, he has such a high calling on his life. And that was starting at around age 4 years old when I had accepted Christ. And I was always a very articulate child, didn't really get along with people in my age group very well, preferred hanging around the adults because they were much more fun to converse with than people my age. And as a result, I didn't relate to children my age very well, and I was bullied severely, physically, verbally. Kids used to follow me home and throw rocks and sticks at me and, come up and just punch me in the face or something, just random things. And when I would go to my parents with this, the resounding reply was always, well, this is because you have a high calling on your life, and God is putting you through the testing fires. Count it all joy and everything like that. So fast forward 30 years of this essentially being raised, and then when I got older, I was told I was a Jonah when I struggled and started having questions because I would read the Bible and I studied it very intensely. I have lots of different translations. I went back to the Septuagint. I had Amplified Bible. I had Hebrew transliteration, which is different from translation. They actually transliterate, don't reorder the words, and take it directly from all this other research. And when I started having questions and doubts, I was being a Jonah. And so further bullying throughout high school was because I was running away from my calling, and God was essentially causing me pain and harm until I would get right back on the path.
Was this your parents telling you this?
This is my parents. It's primarily my mother. I was taken to several pastors, several denominations. I was prayed over. I had hands laid on me, and it was always the same. Oh my God, he has such a high calling on his life. You are set aside. You have something unique that you have to accomplish in the kingdom. And they even had prophecies over me that at age 33, like Jesus, I would come into my ministry.
Oh, what age are you now? You mind me asking?
I'm 34.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there goes their prophecy, fell right to the ground.
Hey, there's still time, right? I mean,
right. Actually, unfortunately, they messed up on that one, and they gave it a time limit and age limit.
Yeah,
you don't do that.
Put it open-ended. So,
well, if you interpret days as years, and if you
hilarious. No, so, anyways, I'm sorry to keep this really, the background quick. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I was a part of several denominations, and I was actually excommunicated from a 5-point Calvinistic church publicly by the discipleship group because I questioned predestination. They taught that some people are predestined to go to heaven and some people are born literally going to hell. They have no choice on that. And being astute in the scriptures, I referenced to them John 3:16. What about this? Their answer to that, well, this scripture has a problem. So another person in my discipleship group left the church because we both questioned together. They called a meeting, told me it was 10 minutes later than it was actually taking place, and this was supposed to be this, pizza party and everything. I got there. There was a circle of chairs, 2 discipleship group, 4 different leaders, and they were like, hey, your chair is in the middle, and they sat me down. Took about 10 minutes telling me that I had caused someone to fall away and that I am no longer welcome because I am questioning their theology. And then they further told me that as punishment, I am to leave early. I'm not going to participate in the pizza party that they had planned.
No.
I didn't drive at this time, and so they kicked me out of the house, and I had to call my parents to come pick me up again.
Oh my gosh.
That's awful.
It's just cruel.
So
that's really awful.
Wrestled with these things for 30 some years, and finally a year ago, I started really just realizing and looking. I have never really seen anybody benefit from any sort of Christian teachings. And in fact, the complete opposite. I saw my mother be completely tormented with depression and frustration because my father wasn't the man of God in the house that she expected him to be. And as a result of that, they had severe conflicts and battled and warred. And now I'm breaking free, and I'm trying to learn how to deal with how do I go about talking with people, because I'm actually I'm not angry. I went through that process. I was slightly angry. I looked back at my life, and I was like, this religion has literally inhibited me, destroyed a large part of my life. I rejected knowledge and science and a lot of things that I loved. And as a result, now breaking free, I've been diving in to astrophysics and orbital mechanics and all the stuff that I really love. But I'm struggling with how do I go about talking to like my family, and I'm struggling with how do I feel towards my family. Yeah. And I'm in a debate right now with somebody from my old church that is a hardcore anti-vaccination.
That's a whole other can of worms. But I want to, kind of interject so we can kind of start giving you some advice, Chris, because this is it's a topic that comes up on this show quite frequently. How do we talk to people? And I can give you a couple different answers on that. I've seen some research, and I have my own practice of how I talk to people. But the first thing I would say for your particular case here, Chris, is I think you need to look at what are your goals in having conversations with people, and really, really think hard about that. Because if your goal is, I want to convince other people that they're wrong and I'm right, you're going to have problems with that, because there's immediately going to be pushback. But if your goal is, I want to develop a working relationship with my family so that I can have, they can have respect for where I'm at right now and even what I think about some of their practices, then I can help you. Because if you're going straight out of the gate, I'm going to tackle this and bring it down. Greater men than you and I have done that before and have failed, because this shit is hard. This is like the stuff that we're talking about here. These are beliefs that are developed over years and years and years and years and years of time, and they're not going to go down in a day. And if you approach it like that, like I'm just going to have one conversation with them and just completely blow their mind, I'm sorry, it just typically doesn't work like that. So if your goal, Chris, is to have a working relationship with your family, then I would say maybe this is a topic that you don't want to talk with them for a bit, right? Because like you need some time to figure that stuff out for yourself and get over what they've done to you, because it sounds like they've abused you, to be honest. Sounds like that's abuse to me. And I would have trouble forgiving my family with that. Go ahead.
And that's exactly where I'm at. Mm-hmm. I don't want to come railing at them and against them, but at the same time, I've literally dove in the last several months watching Atheist Experience, and not just that. I have a book that I've been reading, Christopher Hitchens, marvelous. May he rest in peace. Mm-hmm. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. God is not great. How religion poisons everything. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant book. I've been watching Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Talk Truth, R.N. Ra, another brilliant orator. And he just puts his thoughts together so concisely. Yeah. And that's essentially where I'm at. I don't want to battle with my parents. Mm-hmm. And because I've realized now that and I've always struggled with the concept of eternity, and how there's any sort of justice in that. How people can live their whole lives doing terrible things, and on their deathbed be like, "Oh, I now believe," and all of a sudden they get to go to hell, and somehow that's justice. That's the exact opposite. They're getting exactly what they don't deserve, and on the conversely, people that spend their whole lives doing good things to people are somehow punished eternally for simply not believing.
Yeah. You know what this sounds like to me, V?
What's that?
This sounds like the atheist evangelism phase.
Yeah, you're in the information gathering phase right now. You are doing recon. You are figuring out what it is exactly you believe, which arguments make the most sense to you, which parts of your old life don't make the most sense to you. For some people, that is the concept of justice and mercy. For some people, it's the concept of hell, or the logical problems with the concept of the kind of God we were taught to believe. We all have the thing that makes it the most ridiculous for us. Yeah. So you're in that process right now, and I think you're right. Yeah. It's very easy, especially if you grew up as an evangelical Christian or any kind of fundamentalist Christian, to get into that mindset of, I have information, it's important, I need to share it. I need to share it right now with people who don't agree with me. And I went through that phase. Did you go through that phase?
I definitely went through that phase.
Yeah. It's
right. Yeah. Well, I'm not exactly, that's not exactly what I'm wanting to do, because I know I'm not there yet. And that's why I'm calling to get some more, because I'm definitely not there yet. I'm not ready to go out and just start evangelizing.
Well, so what we mean by this, Chris, though, is, we don't necessarily mean you go out on the streets or make YouTube channels and talk on the
those
talk
guys
show.
Are weird.
Right.
What we really mean is, like, you are figuring a bunch of shit out right now, and it is exciting, and you want to share what you're figuring out with other people. And like, I definitely went through that phase. I was like, wow, this stuff is amazing. I spent way too many nights researching a lot of this stuff, and just figuring this stuff out. And then you start to talk to other people, and you realize, wow, I'm at a way advanced place than this other person because I just know so much about this particular topic. And that's where you're going to find some frustration, and that's where you're going to be like, why aren't people seeing things my way? This seems so logical and reasonable. And this is just
they're more so, it's more so from the angle that they're coming to me, asking me now, why am I leaving? So I'm not wanting to approach them at all, really.
Okay, so
they're
that is different.
To me.
Yeah.
So my mother, she asked me, well, why aren't you Christian anymore? And I said, well, Mom, I said, I've looked at things, and this is the conclusion that I've come to, and I just, can't you respect that? I'm not Christian anymore, and I won't ever be Christian again.
Yeah.
And the first thing that she said to me is, that's sad.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm not going out wanting to, talk and getting into these conversations, but they're coming to me and being like, why do you believe this now? And I came from this extremely toxic theology, which is they believe that the devil, every sickness that you have is because you have some unforgiveness in your life, or you've opened the door to the devil in some way, and the devil's afflicting you. And all the spiritual warfare. I've just seen tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. My mother just lost her best friend to cancer because instead of getting cancer treatments, she was going around to prayer houses for a while.
Yeah. But, Chris, there's a 50% chance that when your mom said, how sad is that, she didn't mean it. And because she's taught to respond to things in a certain way. Like, she's taught that that's how you need to respond to somebody when somebody is coming out as atheist, with disappointment, with derision, because suddenly you're not in the in group anymore. You're part of the out group. And that's how they were taught to view other atheists. And now suddenly you're in that category. In order for them to logically be consistent with their worldview, they have to treat you just like they talk about all the other non-believers. So I wouldn't take too much personal offense to that if that's what's bothering you. But you did mention that.
No, and I haven't.
Yeah, but Chris, I just want to answer your question of, what are you doing in self-defense to kind of help with this stuff? Why aren't these people respecting me? And they may or may not ever come to respect where you're at right now, and that's the sad truth of it. I mean, you've heard stories about Matt and his family.
I've come to terms with that.
Yeah, and the sooner that you're able to come to terms with that, the better. I'm glad that you feel like you have. But if they continue to talk to you about this stuff, invite them. You should bring up the point that it's only fair that you get to ask them questions as much as they get to ask you questions. You need to be like, set the terms like, hey, if this is a conversation you want to have, we need to make this a conversation and not an interrogation, because, it's uncomfortable for everybody involved if it's just you pestering one person about, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And maybe that's a chance for them to be open and consider their own worldview as well, if you can frame it like that. But
also, I think the thing that I resonate with in your story is feeling kind of a sense of obligation to share what you're figuring out. If they're asking, maybe they want to know, and maybe it's on you to give them that knowledge that you have come to understand is so valuable and necessary. That's not something you can put on yourself, though. If you're not able to yet, if you're still hesitant, if you're still learning, if you don't feel like that's a conversation that you would be comfortable having, even if they're asking right now, you are free to say, I don't want to talk about that yet. Let me do more research and I'll get back to you. You don't have to let them put you on the spot. If you want to engage, that's great. And I definitely suggest taking Dan's advice and making sure that it is an open dialogue and you're both asking and answering questions. But don't feel like they can push you into that corner if that's not somewhere you want to be yet, even if you do have information you think is important.
Get used to saying, I don't know. Because I don't know.
I was just about to say. So
that's a scary thing for them. They're not allowed to say, I don't know.
Right.
And you're probably not used to that either. So you feel like you have to give answers to things. But it's okay, my friend. It is all right.
I actually have become quite comfortable with that now, with the I don't know. Because there is a lot of things that we can't know.
Yeah.
And
like why
that was
baby
actually
tooth
one of
split
the
in
biggest.
half in the
That's
middle of
true.
the night.
Will we
Right.
ever know?
I like-
Anyway, continue,
I
please.
like how they changed it. I like how you guys changed it really quick. Called Tooth Wanted for a second.
Did they?
Did they?
They are.
They did. I didn't even notice. We have like this tiny screen off in the distance where we can kind of see ourselves.
Gosh, it's beautiful. It is beautiful.
It was
God
briefly,
damn it.
but it was great.
I love our production
yes,
group. They're fantastic. Anyway.
they're great. All of these shows are really great. Production's great. So hats off to them too. They probably don't get enough credit. Production never gets enough credit.
They definitely don't. They definitely don't. Well, Chris, we do have to kind of wrap things up here, just so we can get to this last call here. But if you did want to talk about this more, we will be hanging out on Discord for just a little bit. And of course, you can always contact me to the truth@atheist-community.org email. And I'm sure there's some people in the chat and the Discord that would love to talk to you about it more, to kind of give you some more tips. But again, we do have to kind of.
How do I get to the Discord?
Yeah, so if you're watching this live stream right now, there is a link to it in the description. So go ahead and check it out there. And there's probably links to it if you're listening to this at home and this is recording as well.
Yeah, that should be in the description.
Yes, should be in the description for that. But anyway, Chris, I just want to thank you again.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. And I definitely, that's exactly the advice I needed to hear. You guys it's exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm getting comfortable with that place. And I know now that it's okay to say, I don't know. And that's one of the largest things that bothered me when I was in the indoctrination and the faith, is that I always felt like I couldn't say that I don't know. I had to say, well, I have the one truth. So thank you so much. I hope to be able to call in again and to continue this discussion, because there's actually so much more
I'm sure.
I can dive into that my childhood and everything.
Zero doubts about that.
Thank you so much.
No
you guys
problem,
have a
Chris.
wonderful night.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for sharing again your story. That's heavy stuff.
It is, and it's all too common.
Well, I don't know about calling your kid a prophet.
Yeah, that's heavy for a kid.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
And then denying them pizza. Chris, if you come to the ACA, we will give you pizza.
Oh, yes. Let's throw a pizza party just for Chris. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that idea. Chris, if you're still listening, come on down, man. We'll make that happen for you. We do have one more call that we do want to get to tonight. I know we're getting kind of near the end point of the show, but it is our friend Dean, caller of the show.
Hello, Dean.
Hello, Dean. How is it going?
It's going all right. I'm just traveling from Tennessee back to North Carolina. I've been listening in to the show.
Yeah, I was like, oh, is this a different Dean? It says he's from Tennessee. Nope, it's our same old buddy Dean.
I should have just told him North Carolina. Maybe I wouldn't be last for the second time I called in. Yeah.
Oh. What can we help you with, Dean?
So, Dee, I have a question for you. So, in other conversations that you've had, and I listened to your conversation with Matt. I don't remember if you mentioned this or not.
Okay.
You said that one of the things that convinced you, is kind of like the nail in the coffin, and you correct me anytime you want, was your study and you're looking at Bart Ehrman's work. Is that true? Is that correct?
No, I found Bart Ehrman after I'd already become an atheist, so his work wasn't influential in deconverting me, but it did give me some interesting insights into the time period and the creation of the Bible and canonization and all that, which was affirming of what I had already suspected, but it wasn't necessarily part of my deconversion.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So my question is along, I guess, that line, and I guess that switches my question then. Was it a specific argument that put the nail in the coffin, or was it a series of arguments? I guess my question is, what was it that finally was like the nail in the coffin to the God belief?
Man, that is, we could have this conversation all night. When you get your YouTube channel all set up, you should call me and we'll have a convo.
Well, let me try.
For now, let me just say it wasn't one thing. I don't think it rarely ever is in my experience. It is a lot of small things, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. I guess for me, the one I go back to in my head, and again, this could be me just putting extra weight on it, remembering it, or it might have actually been the thing that actually the penny really dropped. I was going out for coffee with a friend of mine, and I had always looked up to this friend as somebody who was a spiritual mentor and somebody who really knew God and knew the Bible and was a better Christian than I was. And at that point, I didn't really call myself a Christian, but I didn't call myself an atheist. Mm-hmm. And we were having a conversation, and I mentioned that I disliked the idea of God as male, God as masculine, God as he, him. When God allegedly was not, didn't have a dick. And my friend was kind of shocked at this. And she said, well, that's what he's described as in the Bible. So why would you think otherwise? And I said, well, because men wrote the Bible, and they wrote it in a time period where if an entity of any kind was going to have weight and authority, it would have to be male, because that was in the... are you on speakerphone? Because I'm hearing myself back.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
But yeah, so I said it's because the people who wrote the Bible wrote it in that way based on their understanding at the time. And that blew her mind. And so we got into this whole rabbit trail of well, what do you mean the Bible isn't literal? And what do you mean there were other interpretations? And I mentioned St. Augustine, who I've mentioned on the show before because I like to think of him as my nemesis. But, but I mentioned St. Augustine, and she goes, who? And the penny kind of dropped for me, that the people that I looked up to, the people who had taught both of us how to learn, how to be Christian, how to be spiritual people, that I suddenly had this whole body of knowledge that she didn't have. And it wasn't a flaw for her. It wasn't a fault. Yeah. She wasn't given this information. I had done this study, this research. But that was kind of the last thing that kind of dropped for me, because anybody who doesn't know, St. Augustine's interpretation of the Bible kind of laid a trajectory for how we talk about it today. The concept of original sin, the concept of, purity culture, all of this kind of originated around there with him. And so to hear that the person that influenced 90% of how she read the Bible wasn't even a person she knew existed, kind of just, it really shook me. So that is probably the closest thing I could come to as that kind of last penny dropping. But again, it was one straw on a full stack.
So if I can ask one follow-up, I know you guys are running short on time. My follow-up would be then, if that's what kind of was the last straw that broke the camel's back, if the web there could be unwoven and it wasn't the case that, I guess if the inverse were true of that, what you just described, would that cause you to go back to Christianity? Because it seems like, and I could be wrong, it seems like what you're saying is what broke the camel's back for me is the person who I looked up to was simply or possibly potentially uninformed about what I knew, and therefore I gave up Christianity. So I'm asking if it were the case that they did have reasonable answers to what you laid down, would that have kept you in the Christian camp?
No, I don't think so. First of all, because I didn't lose my faith because of that conversation. It had been out the door. That was maybe just a little extra push, but it was already in that direction fully. But also, I have had many, many, many conversations with other Christians who do have more reasonable answers, quote unquote, who have the who know who Augustine is, who know who Pelagius is, who know biblical history and church fathers. And those were actually the people who helped lead me out those are the people who I had these conversations with initially.
Side note, you know on Twitter how there's like a bunch of people with like anime profile pics? There's a whole culture of Twitter of people who put saints as their profile pics who are like Catholic and who will debate you about Catholicism.
I know.
You know what I'm talking about, right? It's a whole thing. Anyway, continue.
Andrew.
We don't have enough time. I appreciate your answer there. There's a lot that, I wish I could just come to Austin and just talk to both of you for like 7 hours.
You already did, Dean.
So,
hey, come on back.
I know, but I need to do it again. And,
well, Dean, you got
it. And I really think that, Dan, your show, people really need to support your show more because not just because it's unique and different, but because, you get some pretty wild calls.
Is that right, Pastor Dean? Pastor Dean, just want to make sure. Pastor Dean is saying people should support my show. Is that an official endorsement, Pastor Dean?
That doesn't mean I agree with everything that Dan says.
Okay, fair enough. I'll take it.
I find it so very, very interesting, and it needs to get more support. And CS need to call more.
They do need to call more.
On all of you.
Well, Dean, you probably are friends with more theists than I am at this point. You can make that happen for me. I'm just saying. Anyway, we do got to wrap things up. But, Dean, thanks again for calling, man.
Later. All right, no problem.
Nice to talk to you again.
See ya. There he is.
Yeah. It seems to be a theme that he's looking for that one thing. That one argument that would convince you back, that one thing that convinced you out.
Did you notice Dean's doing a little street epistemology there?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, which I respect.
Yeah.
Street epistemology is tight. But I think that it's not the way things work in the real world a lot of the time, where it's one thing that makes or breaks such an important decision, because that was my entire world.
Yes.
One thing wasn't going to change it then. One thing isn't going to change it now.
And when we talk about what breaks, the straw that breaks the camel's back, I think that's an inherently almost an emotional description, because like, I could talk, because what's going to be most personally convincing to me is definitely going to be different from you.
Right, exactly.
Even though the real reasons why we won't believe are probably similar in that they're either philosophical or historical. But when we say, what's the straw that broke the camel's back, that might call into something for me, just the idea of like biblical scholarship, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
And then same thing for me, right? I started to read about it, and then I talked about it with my mom, and it's like, oh, nobody knows what this is.
Yeah.
I didn't know what this is. I didn't know the history of all this stuff. And it's like, wow, I should know this if I'm going to claim that I believe this.
Exactly.
And most people don't. Most people just don't know it. And that's not their fault. It's just how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. But I do appreciate Dean. Again, Dean is, I think he's still a patron of our show. And he's been here down in Austin. He has my number, so he can call me whenever he wants. He has my cell. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. But if he makes time for me, I'll definitely talk to him.
Sure.
But anyway, we're getting long in the tooth here. And we want to just spend just a few minutes on Discord. Just a few minutes right after the show here so we can talk to you guys who are listening live. But again, this is Truth Wanted, the live call-in show. We talk about what you believe and why. If you're missing it, tune in next week. Every Friday at 7 o'clock Central, I bring in a new guest host every single week. And this host, there's the crew cam in the back that's coming in. I was going to get to you guys. Come on. Yeah, that's the crew cam. Crew in the back helps make this show happen every week. This is all from volunteers who make this show happen. And so if you decide to donate on Patreon, remember this goes straight to the organization and what we do here. And none of it goes directly to neither of us. And please consider donating on patreon.com/truthwanted. Subscribe to the channel, comment if you haven't already. Check it out on Facebook. There's the Truth Wanted Facebook page. And you can follow me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. And any inquiries into the show is going to be at truth@atheist-community.org. And V, where can people find you at?
People can find me on Twitter at authorconfusion. I'm almost at 2,000, guys.
Woo!
Help me out here.
She's got more than I do.
And then if you're interested in seeing me on other shows, I'm on Talk Heathen every Sunday at 1 p.m. And then I'm also the co-host for Secular Sexuality, and that is Thursdays at 7.
Yes. So definitely check V out. She is awesome. V, we're never going to have you again on sometime. And I'll take you up on that secular sexuality.
We'll be in touch. I'll have my people contact your people.
I'll have my people contact your people.
Or the same people.
It's the same people. Yeah, it's absolutely the same people. Well, anyway, folks, that about wraps it up for another great episode of Truth Wanted. Remember to keep always wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
No, you're done.